to I think this is our third installment of Beyond Resistance, the podcast that discusses politics from a local perspective here in Midland, Michigan. Hey, Jennifer, how are you?
I am fine. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. I see you have your Detroit Lions t-shirt
I
on for
do.
the playoffs this weekend.
Yep. I've got three, so I've been like wearing them. You know, I am washing them though.
Much respect. So today we were going to talk about some work that you've been doing that kind of looked at and dissected the political landscape and the data and analysis from the last election from a local perspective. This is something that takes a while, right, to come
Yes.
through after the
Yep.
election. You really want that information. You want to just diagnose and slice and dice what happened and why right away. And it takes a bit, right, to get the numbers,
Yeah.
first of all,
I
and
mean,
then
some
to do
states
the
were still
analysis.
counting.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
Right. Yeah. So as much as, us political nerds on the edge of our seats for things like numbers and results, we have to practice our patience. And then Jennifer, you wrote a really amazing editorial in our local paper, the Midland Daily News, that came out this week, just all about the numbers, but not only about the numbers as far as like just diagnosis, but really kind of highlighted some things to be hopeful about,
Yeah.
especially as it relates to our work here in Midland. So why don't you give us an overview of what you saw and what you came to believe from that?
Okay. So, well, just to start first off, we know that Trump had 49.9% of the vote. Harris had 48.4, and there was like 1.62% who voted for other candidates. Um, but I like to look at not just like the amount of people that actually voted, but also sort of the numbers related to who didn't vote. Because there's think 247, 245. I've got it written down somewhere, but I don't remember the exact number. Registered voters in America.
Mm,
And if you
mm-hmm.
take a look at how the candidates did based on registered voters, not just who voted, Trump only got 31% of the vote. Harris got almost like 30.61% of the vote. And like other was 1.02%, but 36.73% of people didn't vote. And Pew Research did this poll after the election, um, and they looked at like who voted and if they were happy with their vote and happy with the outcome, that sort of thing. But then they also did a really in-depth look at who didn't vote, and the various reasons why. Some of them were it's too hard, and that depends on your state. Here in
Mm,
Michigan, we've got it pretty
mm.
easy. Some of them thought it just didn't matter. I mean, there was a couple of different reasons. But if they also asked all of these registered voters who did not vote, if they wish they had voted.
Mm.
And 42%, so there's 90 million people who didn't vote. 42% wished they had voted. That's like 37 million people.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like, obviously, this is some speculation here, but I guess I kind of think if if the can you're not going to wish that you had voted if your candidate had won.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I
If you
mean?
were happy with the results, right? You're not going to be
Yeah,
like, oh man, I wish that I had
yeah,
voted. Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
So just on an overall, like that national look, I just ran the numbers and it was like, okay, so there were what did I say, 77 million people that voted for Trump, but 115 million people, if you look at the Harris voters, the other voters, and registered non-voters who wish they had voted, over 115 million people did not want Trump. 45%, almost 46% of this country did not want Trump
Hmm.
as the president. So
Hmm.
tiny bright spot doesn't mean a whole lot when he did win the election. It's a little frustrating too, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it is something to look at.
Yeah. I think I appreciate that so much to look at that and like, I guess you could respond to that in two ways, right? You could respond to that thinking like, oh man, like what kind of state are we in as a country if this giant percent of the voting population who are registered decides not to vote on what feels like a monumental election, right? They
Yeah.
just like did not
Hmm.
make it out to vote, and that's very sad. And what does that say about our democracy? And
Yeah.
I'm totally in that space. The other way you can think about that, which are, you can hold both of these truths at the same time,
Hmm.
is like what an opportunity that is, right? To like reach out to those voters in the
Yeah.
future. So I really like to look at data in a way that diagnoses what happened, so that it can give us information about what to do in the future, right? And
Hmm.
so that kind of look at that, like, you hear this word mandate floated around as if Trump won such a landslide that he has carte blanche to do whatever he wants now because everyone agrees with him. Which is just not true at all. If you look at this election, like it was just won on the margins. Yes, it
Yeah.
was a bigger victory than he's had before, just in terms of popular vote, but that doesn't mean that it's a mandate.
Yeah. And I'd heard a statistic. I don't remember the exact one, so don't quote me on it, but it was like 150, 150,000. I can't remember the exact number. If we had had, that number, 100, 150,000 of votes that went the other way to Harris over a couple of key swing states, Harris would have won.
Uh,
It's not, I mean, it stinks that he won by like 2.3 million or something. It was like 1.5%. But it it's not as big a mandate as some people are trying to make it out to be. And we have room to make changes and try to win some of those voters and bring them into, even if it's just bringing them into vote. I mean, that's part of our civic duty, and,
yeah,
and I just really want everybody to vote, regardless of
totally.
who they vote for.
Because look, not voting is a form of voting, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, you're not voting and you're showing how disenfranchised you are. You're not voting because you agree with the status quo. You're not voting for whatever reason, but not voting is a form of voting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've heard, like some mandate, blah 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 stuff. The other thing I've heard on the left and like the circles that I've, sort of exist in is like this sort of right after the election, a couple of weeks for a couple of weeks after, not so much in the last couple of weeks, but this sentiment of like this election showed us who we are and we're just a country full of, you know,
Racist, homophobic.
racists, right? Exactly, yeah. Sexist, racist, all the things,
Yeah.
and this is who we are as a country. Um, and you know, at the risk of saying, but at the risk of like the but not all, right,
Yeah.
thing that
Yep.
people say, it's also not true that this is who we are. And in fact, like your numbers, your analysis is
Yeah.
showing us that it's actually
Hmm.
not who the majority of people are, right?
Hmm.
It's who the majority of the people that voted in this election, and even not the majority, right? It's
Yeah.
the plurality of all of that. And so it's not who we are. It's showing us that, there's still and has been for the last 8 years, but probably way longer than that, uh, a group of people in our country who align themselves with those kinds of
Hmm.
thinking, and we have to go into that note with like eyes wide open, knowing that
Yeah.
that exists. But that is not who we are, for
And
sure.
I would even say it's not all of the people who voted for Trump, because there's a lot of,
Absolutely.
exit polls and focus groups and just all, evidence of elections around the world. First of all, elections around the world, incumbent parties have been thrown out everywhere, and it doesn't matter if they were right, left, or center. They've
People
just
just
been
want
replaced.
change.
Yeah,
People just
people
are
want change.
want change. Yeah.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of people, you hear in these exit polls and in the focus groups, it was the economy. And I have my own opinions about the state of our economy and why it's the way it is. Um, but that's because I'm like a really, and you too, we're both in-depth people that follow this stuff pretty closely, and we know what's
Yeah.
going on. Most voters aren't like that. They're just out there living their lives, going to their 1, 2, 3 jobs, taking
Hmm.
care of their kids, trying to figure
Hmm.
out how to make ends meet from day to day, and they don't have time to follow things as closely as we do. So they don't know all of it. And sometimes it's some people could be, oh, they're willfully ignorant. I'm sure there are some people that are like, I just don't want to know, don't care, I'm voting on vibes. And you know what, that's also their choice, like they have that right.
Yeah.
um so
Yeah.
it's not even all of the people that voted for Trump would agree with a lot of, there are a lot of people that don't like him that voted for him because
Hmm.
they're worried about their bottom line.
Yeah, because like people, they might not be as in depth and nerdy as we are about like
Mhm.
politics and the economy and all that, but they are in depth about and nerdy about their own lives
Yeah.
and how they're feeling and how disenfranchised they feel or how they're having trouble. They usually buy two dozen eggs a week, but they could only buy one this week. I mean, the
Mhm.
people know that that is true.
Yeah.
Um, and those are the types of things that inform the votes of the folks who wake up that day or
Yeah.
do early voting up until that day.
Yeah, and we're a family of egg eaters. There's only one person in this household that doesn't eat eggs, and it's that egg price is hitting us pretty
Yeah,
hard too.
you totally notice. You totally
Mhm.
notice for sure. Um, so yeah, so I mean, I think that there's a lot to learn, right, from all of this analysis, and there's no end to the types and depths and ways to slice and dice the data and look at it, and we'll continue to do that because our party locally has always been, since I've been involved, very, very data driven.
Yeah,
And so we'll continue to do that. But speaking of local information,
yeah.
I know you've been doing some work kind of like beyond the national landscape, like
Hmm.
to look at what went down in Midland City and the county, and sort of doing some comparison to the rest of the state. What are you seeing there?
So, just quick, I'll start nationally and move on down. So, like nationally, as a whole, the country's electorate moved 5.9% to the right. Michigan, as a whole, moved 4.4% to the right, so not quite as bad as nationally, but still not great. Midland County, this is a bright spot. I'm excited about this. We only moved the entire county, the red county of Midland. We only moved 0.51% to the
No
right,
doubt.
like
Wow. When
less than a
Michigan
point.
moved almost five and the country
Yeah,
moved five, more than
yeah.
five.
So like
That's amazing.
yes, and then even better, looking at the city of Midland, which has been Midland has been known as the bastion of republicanism in Michigan for a really long time, and we've been changing that.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely starting in 2018, we started moving things a little left and just have continued to move it to the point where we are a blue city. I think in 2020 we were at 2% of a Democratic lean, and we've moved another 1% left from this election. So now we're at a 3% Democratic lean in the city. Harris won the city.
Yeah. I
I can't remember. I did not check if Slotkin won the city, but I think she did.
think she did. Yeah. I
Kristen
think she
McDonald
did.
Rivet won the city.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like Elena Smith, our Democratic County Commissioner, was reelected. We unfortunately didn't achieve our goal of 2 more Democratic County Commissioners, and we're not sure why. We're gonna keep working on that. But yeah, we did a lot to maintain and continue to move this area blue.
Yeah. It just keeps getting better, right? So like, I don't have the numbers at the top of my mind, but if even in 2022, we moved
Yeah,
the needle, right?
yeah,
We elected um, Gretchen Whitmer in 2022 as a city of Midland.
yeah.
Kristen McDonald Rivet for the state senate was elected. We had a good number of kind of progressive leaning ballot initiatives that year,
Mhm.
and the city went for all of those. And I can remember like as soon as not far back as 2018, right, when I was running for state representative, just the like um the idea in Lansing about Midland that I would hear. I
Mhm.
would like go to Lansing, I would be talking to
Yeah.
like statewide Democratic folks, right? Anyone who would listen to me when I was deciding to run, and they would say to me things like, Sarah, totally do it. You're not going to get any help. You're not going to get any like funding from the Democratic Party, or institutional funding from like labor or whatever, because Midland's a Republican town. It just is. And this was like no data was there was no analysis going on. It was just like the reputation of Midland historically.
Yes.
And I mean, and to their, defense, it was true. Like it was
Yeah.
very true. We did some research before I ran in 2018, and we could not find another Democrat that had represented the city of Midland and Lansing at all ever, like since the beginning of time, essentially.
Yeah.
So for us to have been able to like do that work in 18, keep it going, just really start to build this movement, and it, I'm really proud of it and the work that we've been doing and continue to do as a team. And that's also where I just kind of fall back on when I hear this idea that this is who we are. I know that's not true
Mhm.
here. I know that's not true here.
Mhm.
Um, and like I I I know that after the election in 2016, I have a distinct memory of going to Meijer the next day and just like giving stink eyes to all the people at Meijer because I knew everyone else in the city of Midland had voted for
Yeah.
Trump and I was the only, like, my husband and I were the only Democrats. And since then, we've been able
Mhm.
to find each other, build this movement. And
Yeah.
so, I know that like more than half of the people in my city, I can say hey to, right? I don't have to give them stink eyes
Mhm.
after this last election because Midland's blue. Midland's
Yeah.
light blue. We still have a lot of work to do to
Yep.
hold it and keep it solid and all the things. We can't let our foot off the gas at all. But man, it's been a lot of work, but it's really been good.
And it just reminds me how complicated voters are. Like, a lot of people look at it as like Republican, Democrat. And sure, there are a lot of people that pretty much vote one way or the other. And even me, like, I'm a Democrat. I'm a chair of the Democratic Party. So, I'm a declared Democrat. Um, and the chances of me voting for a Republican are pretty darn slim. But you know what? If a good person comes along and I think the Democratic candidate is not, I'm open to it. It's going to take a really good person, but I look at just even with our county commission election. So Harris won the city. Like I said, I'm pretty sure Slotkin and Kristen McDonald Rivet, Democrats, won the city, but we only achieved 1 out of 3 Democratic county commission seats, and the 2 candidates we had were really good
Great.
candidates
Yeah, they're really
out there
great.
doing the work. It's not like we just put their names on the ballot
Yeah.
and let it go. They're out there doing the work. So I think it shows like voters, even here in Midland, who have voted for Harris, Biden, Whitmer, Nessel, Benson, Slotkin, Rivet, like they voted for a lot of Democrats. They're still, in some cases, voting for the local Republican who maybe they know better. They know from personal experience or who is an incumbent. So
Yeah.
voters are complicated.
Yeah, complicated. Oh, humans, right? In
Yeah.
general are complicated for sure. Yeah, I know. So there's still a lot to learn, right, from these
Mhm.
numbers and from these results. I just hope that folks, as we kind of are on the precipice of the inauguration next week, which I will not be watching.
Nope.
Um,
I will do anything but.
yeah, right. Literally anything like laundry or, I mean, go to the gym, like whatever.
Yep.
Not that. Um, but I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be sad and worried and anxious. I'm all of those things too.
Hmm.
Um, but there's also a lot of things to hold on to in terms of like local results and just the momentum that we've been able to continue, um, that hopefully can like sustain us so
Yeah.
that we can live to fight, right? Another day, another day, another day, in this work.
Yeah. And this is something I think you and I have talked about a little bit. Um, we were talking about it yesterday in context of the Women's March, but just in general, one of the first things you said to me after the election was, at least we don't have to find each other.
Yeah,
We've already found each other. We have our groups. We know what we're going to do. It's part of our lives now. The things
yeah,
that we do to politically advocate for our community, people we love, uh, people that, you know, maybe don't have as big a voice. We've got our groups, we know who we are. And like yesterday with the women's, you know, we were talking about the women's march or the People's March on Saturday. And there's a couple different ones in Michigan. If anybody is listening and is interested, there's an event in Midland. There's an event in Lansing, Kalamazoo, I think St. Clair Shores, and there's some up north too. But anyway, so find one if you can. But like, I'm not going because my son has a swim meet, and maybe in 2017 I would have said, well, sorry, I'm not going to your swim meet because I have to go to this march. And now it's like, I don't feel the need to get energized or find my group or figure out what I'm going to do. I already know.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be lower numbers at these marches, and that's going to be pundits are going to be like, oh my gosh, the resistance is dead. It's not dead. We've just already mobilized.
Yeah, exactly. We're already mobilized. We've already found each other. That lonely feeling at Meyer, right, is not there anymore. And you know, I've heard, and it's probably true, that like the Trump administration coming in for the second time is going to be better positioned. It's going to be stronger. It doesn't have to learn the ins and outs of things. It's going to be able to, like, you know, wreak havoc sooner. And that's all probably true, but it's also true that we are also better. We don't have to find each other. We know how to do this resistance thing, and these, you know, we know, right, where, what levers to pull and how to make change. So we're better off too. And yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, you and I both went to the Washington March in 2017. I don't even think we knew each other back
we
then.
didn't know each other then.
Isn't that weird? We were like in the mix of a million people. We didn't even know each other. But and that's just a great example of like, we like literally lived in the same town, and
well,
we hadn't
technically I
found
lived
each
out in
other
the
yet.
farm at that point.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I had
from
not
the
quite
same town,
moved
but yeah.
here yet. But.
Yeah, I mean, and so like that marching and all of that still can serve a purpose for folks, and it maybe served a different purpose in 2017. But you know, I mean, I guess, you know, underestimate us at your peril, right? If you want to think that whatever happens on Saturday is an indication of weakness, go for it, because it's not. Go for it because it's not. That actually would be better for us, and for our work. So
yeah. And there's a lot of people out there who are tired. We're tired. But you know what? Sure. Women get shit done. We always have, and we always will. So I don't see us stopping anytime soon.
For real. Awesome. All right. Well, it's been great talking to you. I think as we kind of, you know, get more data, have more time for analysis, you know, continue to be so data driven, it's going to help us really understand like where to focus our efforts and energy and resources, and how, you know, how to best kind of like move forward. And I think that's the best way to do it, is just sort of making decisions from a place of data, leading kind of from a place of heart and love, and we'll just continue that work.
Yeah. All right.
Good to see you.
You too. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.